You know what's strange? Every generation gets a story. Boomers got the American dream, Gen X got the eye roll. Millennials got blamed for everything, and Gen Z gets studied like a new species. But if you were born between 1976 and 1985, you've spent your whole life watching those stories go by like buses that were never yours. Too young to be Gen X. Too old to be a millennial. Every article, every meme, every, if you remember this post, close, but never quite you. And that feeling, that low-grade sense of standing between two rooms and belonging to neither, isn't in your head. There's an actual psychology to it. So let me tell you about the generation that almost didn't get a name. Picture this. It's 1988. You're maybe 8, 9 years old, Saturday morning. The TV takes a second to warm up, and cartoons only exist until noon. After that, they're just gone, and no force on earth can bring them back. If you want to talk to your best friend, you call their house, and you have to get past their mum first. You memorize phone numbers, you memorize directions. When you're bored, you're just bored, and nobody considers that an emergency. Now hold that childhood in one hand, because here's what makes you different from every Gen Xer who had a similar one. Right as your brain hit adolescence, the exact window when it's most hungry for novelty, the entire world changed. The modem screamed its weird dial-up song in the hallway. You made your first email address. Probably something embarrassing. You burned CDs, ranked your MySpace top 8 like it was a diplomatic decision, learned to type on T9 before real keyboards existed. The internet didn't raise you. It arrived while you were becoming someone, and that timing did something specific to your psychology. Developmental researchers talk about formative windows. The idea that what surrounds you between roughly 10 and 20 gets wired in as normal more deeply than anything that comes before or after. Gen X hit that window fully analog. Millennials hit it with the internet already humming in the walls. You hit it during the transition itself, which means change, massive, ground-shifting technological change, isn't something that happened to you. It's the environment you grew up inside. It's your native weather. The sociologist Dan Woodman at the University of Melbourne helped popularize a term for this, a microgeneration, a thin slice of people, maybe 10 years wide, whose defining trait is that they bridge two eras instead of belonging to one. And the Xennial slice has a very particular shape. You got an analog childhood's patience and a digital adulthood's fluency, and this is the part almost nobody says out loud. You got them in the right order. Think about what that actually means. You know how to wait, because you spent a childhood waiting. For the song on the radio, for the photos to come back from the shop, for your turn on the family phone. Delayed gratification wasn't a discipline you practiced. It was just physics. But you also adopted every new platform young enough that none of it intimidates you. So you move through technology like a native and through boredom like a native, and almost no one else alive can honestly say both. It shows up everywhere once you look. At work, you're the person who can talk to the 60-year-old director and the 24-year-old analyst, and quietly translate between them because you've genuinely lived in both of their worlds. You read a room the analog way, faces and pauses and tone, and then follow up with a perfectly calibrated message, because you learned social skills before screens and screen skills before everyone else. Researchers who study this cohort keep landing on the same word for it, adaptability. Not as a personality trait, as a childhood. And your relationship with the internet is different in a way that's easy to miss. You remember what privacy felt like. Your most embarrassing teenage moments live in maybe 4 people's memories and one shoebox of photos, not on a server, forever, searchable. So you use social media the way someone uses a rental car, comfortably, competently, and without ever quite believing it's yours. You post less, you lurk more. You've never fully bought the idea that your life needs an audience. That's not being behind, that's remembering the before. There's an economic layer to this too, and it's less cozy. You entered adulthood right as the ground started moving. The dot-com bubble burst just as the oldest of you started working. Then 9/11 rewrote the world in a single morning of your early 20s. Then, right as you were finally hitting your stride, buying homes, starting families, 2008 pulled the floor out. You were raised on Gen X's skepticism, launched into millennial instability, and got the full weight of both. Which is why so many Xennials hold this strange double posture. Hope for the plan, and a quiet backup plan for the plan. It's not pessimism, it's pattern recognition. Now, I want to be honest because this bridge position isn't all quiet superpower. There's a cost to spending your whole life translating. When you belong to two worlds, there's a version of you that never feels fully claimed by either one. Gen X didn't quite take you. Millennials definitely didn't want you. And that can calcify into a kind of chronic in-betweenness. Always the adapter, never the default. Some Xennials describe feeling like a guest everywhere. Fluent in every room, at home in none. If that lands somewhere real for you, it's worth sitting with, because adaptability that never rests starts to feel less like a skill and more like a job you never applied for. But here's the reframe that actually matters. Every era of massive change has needed a small group of people who could stand with one foot on each side and hold the two worlds together long enough for everyone else to cross. That's not a leftover generation, that's a load-bearing one. The reason you never got a clean story is that your job was never to be a chapter. It was to be the hinge. You're the last people who will ever remember both. The world where information was scarce and attention was abundant, and the world where it flipped. Everyone older can only explain the before. Everyone younger can only imagine it. You carry the actual comparison in your own memory, in your own nervous system, and in a culture that's currently tearing itself apart arguing about what screens are doing to us. The people who lived both sides aren't the forgotten generation. They might quietly be the most important witnesses we have. So no, you're not Gen X. You're not a millennial. You were never supposed to be either. You're the bridge. And the strange, specific, in-between childhood you had wasn't a gap in history. It was the crossing point. If this hits something real, the comments are where Xennials keep finding each other. Drop the year you were born and the one memory that instantly proves it. I read all of them. And if you want the other half of this story, I made a whole video on the psychology of Gen X, the generation that raised half of you and ignored the other half. It's on your screen right now. Subscribe if you're new here, because this channel is for the people who never quite saw themselves in anyone else's story. See you in the next one.